he does have a good few.
And your association with Willie Mullins must give you some kick.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose that something that really come around since Cheltenham last year. So, it's a big boost towards obviously getting on the higher quality of horses as well. And I suppose it gives you great confidence when you're getting the rides on them horses and things, and that he's putting the faith in you to ride some of them.
So what happened? What was the turning point from your perspective in terms of, like, and I know it's very early on and we're not getting carried away or anything, but at the same point, you said Cheltenham last year was a bit of a turning point there in that relationship. How did that come about?
Well, he did get on a horse that was ever so slightly well handicapped, to be fair.
Just looking back on it now, you would think it'd been bad if I got him beat. So probably didn't know at the time how well handicapped he was, but we knew he had a good chance and everything. So I was just lucky to get the opportunity, and it just opened more doors for me. In that the horse won as well, and I was able to move on from it.
The Martin Pipes obviously open to conditional riders, which I think is a great idea. It's one of the races that one of the new races I definitely like in Cheltenham. But how did it come about? You got the ride in Galopin Des Champs.
So it came around. I was actually supposed to ride a horse for Henry de Bromhead, but he wasn't too sure which race he was going for, and he ended up going for a different race. So I was kind of looking for another outside ride, and I was just lucky. Willie had that horse in it, and my agent Ken was on to them, and so I was just glad to get the ride.
It's mad that I suppose you talk about sliding doors moments and all that, but like the publicity of something like that wasn't even a guaranteed ride for you. It's I guess you need your bits of luck as well along the way in your career.
Yeah, certainly. That's it. You need a bit of luck along the way, and just to try and make the most of them opportunities when you get them, I think is the big thing.
Well, we keep talking about it, but you have to be prepared for when the opportunity arises that you're able to take it, and that obviously is the case in this instance. And frequently we've talked about jockeys before having a big win, but it doesn't automatically open more doors. It's actually just a career highlight in and of itself. For you, this is obviously part of a progression. So people have spotted that there's hard work behind the talent that you have, and so I'm kind of just interested in that mix. Where did you realise when you're successful like that it was going to be a big opportunity for you at the time? Like, is that because obviously winning the race itself is huge, but
yeah, definitely it would be my biggest highlight of my career so far. Definitely, so it was a great race to win. And into ride a winner at Cheltenham Festival is something that I suppose when you're younger that you would always dream of doing, and you probably never think that you actually would. So to actually do that was a great thrill, and it definitely is my biggest highlight. So I was hoping at the time maybe it might open a door for me to get into, just to pick up some of the spare rides that were going there, and so hopefully that I just continue to do that.
My Racing Moment is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Share every racing moment. Visit hri.ie or follow Horse Racing Ireland on social media. I'm really always interested in this, Sean, when you talk about that. Like, obviously you had to put the work in to get the ride in the first place, but knowing at the time that it is an opportunity for you, do you do anything different? Is it just about confidence that you get from being successful in a situation where somebody like Willie Mullins trusts you in a race like that?
Yeah, definitely. I suppose you will get confidence in that. I suppose you get a lot of confidence from riding winners, and even riding horses of better quality and everything. I think you can feed on that a lot, and can help you improve a lot as well.
And how do you improve? Because that's the $64 million question, isn't it? As a jockey, it's like, get better horses is generally the answer that we get.
No, that's it. I suppose experience is probably the big thing. I suppose you're always learning and improving with experience. Every day is a new day, and every race is different, and you're always going to have different situations in races, and it's just a matter of trying to do the right thing. But I think if you make mistakes, hopefully to try and learn from it, and put that experience to good use the next day.
It's mad to think in the last 10 months you've ridden Concertista, Honor Jameen and Galopin Des Champs.
Yeah, it's it's great. So this time last year, I definitely wouldn't have thought I'd be getting the chance to sit on some of those horses. So we've been very lucky now this season, and so it's a great experience for me to get to sit on them horses too, and in the higher quality races too.
And I actually texted you the day of Concertista's win at Limerick, because I was texting you to say that I'd been on to Willie Mullins, and he was just full of praise for the ride that you gave the horse, but without kind of blowing smoke up your proverbial, you were really, really like chilled out in a race that, like, I guess you don't really want a race like that where there's a horse out in front where you're kind of half wondering, this has to come back here or I'm made to look an idiot, and you just have to bide your time.
Yeah, that's it. I suppose it kind of comes a point in a race where you are wondering, are they gone a bit too far, or will they come back with things? But as well as saying that the mare that day that gone from Kitty Galore, I'd actually known her pretty well myself. I'd won 3 races on her too. So, and I suppose she was going over a longer trip than would have been ideal for her on heavy ground. So I suppose I kind of had that in my head that I thought that she would struggle to get home. So, but I was just trying to ride my own mare to best pace that she needed to go through the race to finish out with strong too.
I think that's so important, because like if you say you knew that Kitty Galore was a 3 mile chaser who obviously was going off hard, but like I guess if you do your homework, it does pay off in a race like that as well.
Definitely, yeah. Like you really have to go through the races and know some of the horses and things, and can definitely be a help when you're in that race situation.
It's interesting, like, because if the 3 horses I mentioned is fair enough, but like your strike rate is 9%, whereas like yourself and namesake Dara, actually you're both at 9%. So you're obviously riding a lot of horses to get experience as well that obviously wouldn't have a great chance necessarily.
Yeah, definitely. That I would have a lot of horses, and probably riding a lot of horses that wouldn't have great chances, but I think that's it. You're always learning from them, and even some of the horses I think don't have much chances some days can pop up too. So I just try to get as many rides as I can, and obviously this season I've been trying to get on better quality horses too.
How do you stay even when you win big races and when you lose? Because a 9% strike rate is really good compared to some of the jockeys who we talk to who have different roles within the game, and there are obviously some who have a slightly better strike rate, but it's not by any means a bad strike rate at all, and at the same time 91% of the horses you're on won't end up winning. So how do you make sure that you don't get too carried away with the 9% that do win on the absolute massive days and the small days, and then also with the general kind of run-of-the-mill stuff where you have a chance but you don't win, you don't get too down on that?
Yeah, that's it. I suppose, look, you're even when you have a win or a good day, there's going to be racing tomorrow or the next race and things that that'll bring you back down to where you need to be. You're always never too far away from the fall or anything, so you never get too carried away, and I suppose when you're going through a quieter spell, you just have to stay working at it. And so I find if you're going through a quieter spell, maybe once you get one winner, you might get a couple on in a row then, so just have to keep working at it.
Are you already sort of, I know there's a lot between now and then, but are you already sort of thinking of Cheltenham and what you might ride in the obvious races and the less obvious races, I suppose?
Yeah, look, obviously a lot of talking about Cheltenham's not too far away, and so you always be thinking what might be there, but really I don't know what I'd be riding there now or anything. I'd be hopeful that I'll go over there and pick up some spare rides, but really I can't. It's hard to know what I could get now.
I did a piece with you there in Christmas, and I'm just looking back on it here at Christmas. I'm just looking back on it, and I recall that you have 2 main positives in life going into your apprenticeships at jockey. A, you spent time with Jim Bulger, and B, you actually did your leaving cert. Yeah, I finished my leaving cert. So I hadn't. I'd only rode my own horse, my dad's horse, in Point to Points when I was in school. And I suppose my parents wanted me to do the leaving cert, and I kind of wanted to give it a good go after that, then to try and make it.
Was it much of a conversation about doing the leaving cert, or were you kind of on board with it as well, thinking that's fair enough, it's a good trade-off?
Yeah, no, look, I suppose I was pretty on board with it. I was probably always thought I was going to be a bit tall or heavy to be an apprentice kind of thing. So I suppose I was always kind of looking at just getting my amateur license and just getting some rising point to points and things. So that you can do that and finish school. It's much more workable.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because obviously something changed and you decided you're going to make a go of it as a professional.
Yeah, so I once I finished school, I gave it a go then full time as an amateur, and I had some good success on the point to point field. I was joint leading novice rider in that, and I rode a few winners on the track. So I decided that summer then that I turned condition. I was light enough for that, and it's probably what I wanted to do all the time too.
Right, so it was kind of always in the back of your head. And was it much of a challenge to get to the weight under control to a point where you're like, actually, why not just go for it?
No, my weight was always pretty good. I was probably very light to be riding as an amateur and point to points and things, and so my weight was always good. I don't have to worry too much about it, and it's pretty stable there now, and I don't have to do too much sweating now or looking after too much.
Right. So obviously, then the decision to do the conditional and to ride out your claim, that's all been completely vindicated. Is there a point where you realise early on that you're actually going to be able to do this and you're going to be good at it?
No, I suppose you probably always have to have the belief in yourself that you can do it. I suppose I always believed once if I could get the opportunities that I'd be able to make use of them, and I suppose you always have to have a bit of belief in yourself that you can do it and you can achieve.
Were you good at point to point and on your dad's horse? Was there something early on there where you're like, actually, I'm actually able to handle this. I understand how the race is being run. I can win these races. At what point there does the penny drop and think, actually, I'm going to go for this as well?
Yeah, I suppose I rode the winner on my dad's horse. It was my third ride when I was still in school. I suppose I really got the buzz from it from then, and I knew that's what I wanted to give a good go at it. And then when I was finished school, I was working for Liz Doyle, and I'd rode a bumper winner on my second ride in the track. And I suppose that gives you a bit of confidence, and I suppose that other people can see that maybe you'll be okay and they'll be willing to give you some rides as well.
Well, what was it like going into the weighing room when you went in? I mean, I suppose you came in there's a bit of a changing of the guard type era in racing with McCoy, Walsh, Geraghty, Feely sort of bowing out around a similar enough time, and Davy Russell soldiering on, having a great campaign, but after that then it's kind of, there's a bit of an age gap to the sort of the younger brigade. What was it like going into the weighing room with all these great legends of the game? Is there a respectful kind of welcome for young jockeys? They probably kind of half knew of you anyway, but is it intimidating?
I suppose it can be at times. I suppose you're going in there. When I was growing up, I suppose that's the big jockeys were Ruby Walsh and AP McCoy and Barry Geraghty, and I suppose I rode a few times against Barry Geraghty and Ruby and things. I suppose it when you're going in and seeing them a little bit. So you're not. So when you're growing up watching them. You never really think you would be riding against them, but so it can be a bit intimidating. But really at the end of the day, everyone is pretty fair, and it's a nice environment to be in. I
guess there's a nice atmosphere among the young conditionals and the young riders as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the atmosphere is always pretty good, and I think that most of all everyone seems to get on, and everyone seems pretty fair and everything.
The career progression, it's not an obvious, you need to be careful enough, I suppose, in trying to manage where you go and how how you build your network of opportunities. But to end up at Willie Mullins, obviously, there's no better place in the world to be a national hunt jockey. Are you there 5 days a week riding out? Is that what the kind of day job is during the week when you're not racing?
No, I go there a couple of days a week, and also ride out for Jessica Harrington, who I kind of went to when I turned conditional as well. And I've had some good success from Miss Harrington, and she was very very good thing getting going when I was conditional, and I also ride out a small bit for Paul Nolan still too, who I was riding out for when I turned conditional also. So I try to keep in with them yards and everything as well. I suppose I mostly spent most of my time kind of spreading out amongst a few different trainers, and kind of just mostly focusing on the Willie and them few trainers now.
Yeah, I just like we've had the privilege of having a few yard visits at this point over the last couple of years with the show, and watching the teams of riders riding out in the morning. There's not a huge amount of communication, but if you spot anything or if you see anything, you're kind of it's incumbent on you. It's your job really to say this lad's going really well, or there's just a little bit here that we're working too much or whatever. That level of communication, is that something that you just get better at as time goes on? Is that something that you were always good at? Is it something that now that you're more successful, you're more comfortable kind of speaking up with?
So that's it. More experience you get, the kind of more you kind of know, so as in riding out in the yards, and you get to know the different trainers and the way they train them, and what they kind of like, how they're like to have their horses performing and being trained. Just was the more experience you get that way, the more you can understand yourself how the horse is going, and if the horse is going well or if you're not fully happy with them and things, and you can get that point across to the trainers better as well.
You've actually had more rides for Tom Mullins and Willie Mullins. What's Tom like to ride? I think they're very interesting, the three brothers that train, because they're all very different but compelling in their own way, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I've had a nice bit of success for Tom. A nice bit of luck for him, and he's been good to giving me a few nice rides. Kind of when David retired, he started to use me a bit more, and Tom is very good. He's a very good trainer, and he can be very good and straightforward to ride for, and I've had a nice bit of luck for him.
Willie just seems to be a bit similar in that, like, there's not as much as he knows, for as much as he knows at this stage of the game, he doesn't put excess pressure on you, I suppose, or load you with instructions.
No, I suppose he doesn't like to overcomplicate things, but that's the way I suppose he has, he's worked on the horses going, and they're fitting well, and they're ready to run to the best they can. So he seems to like to keep it straightforward. Then,
do you feel pressure on a ride like Alpine de Champs-Cheltenham?
I definitely would feel a bit of pressure. Certainly. But so a little bit is good as well. And for the bit of nerves too, you'd always have a bit of nerves, but I think you need to have that a bit too, just to keep you straight and concentrated as well.
You're from a different generation, as Johnny has already alluded to the superstar names who you talked about growing up. They were the big names, which probably means you're more on social media, or certainly you are more aware of it and would have been growing up as a digital native. Is that something that you've decided to embrace, or have a policy on, or kind of try and ignore as much as possible? Because as you get more and more high profile, more people will become aware of you, and it's a pretty nasty world out there. Some people will not have nice things to say. So is that something you've thought about or had to deal with just yet?
Yes, well, definitely. I've had a few messages and things. I suppose I think everyone in the weight room has and things. But I suppose not to just have to ignore it and not to really put any pass on.
It's hard though. We get messages from people all the time giving out about the most stupid, inane things, but you end up kind of thinking about it longer than you should do. You shouldn't give any time to the people who never send you anything except criticism, and yet at the same time, it's just there's just that little stone in my shoe about those. It's from time to time it's like, and then other times you're like, delete. Totally understand.
I suppose a few of them can make you laugh sometimes as well. I think a lot of people, they probably don't really understand what they're talking about at all, really. So, you can just take them. I find they'll just take it with a pinch of salt that way.
I think, in fairness in racing, the criticism of jockeys in social media is generally it's the caliber of it is just so low that, like, whereas the criticism of somebody in the media or whatever, there's probably often there might be a grain of truth to it, but like a lot of these lads have just basically lost money. And that's what it is. It's like, well, I lost on a Sean O'Keeffe horse who arrived late and was beaten a half a length. He's a mug, like, what an idiot, like. And you're like, well, did you really need to go on social media to tell me that? I don't know. I guess you have to laugh, Sean, as well.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Yeah, I have I think I've had a bit more of a laugh out with some of them now than anything else, really.
And to be fair, there'll be an awful lot of praise for good rides as well. Like, let's not get away from that.
You can't get carried away with that, because the same person who does that is then going to feel entitled. If you like that, they feel entitled to give you some negative stuff, and it's like, well, you've got to take both. I actually don't.
Speaking from experience,
just there are idiots out there who decide that their view is the most important thing that you need to know about right now, there, right this second. And unfortunately, the power of social media is brilliant for so many different things, connecting people and amplifying good messages. And we're going to see it over the next while. It's going to deliver us eyewitness accounts of what's actually happening in the war, but at the other side, it's completely being manipulated. So
I saw a stat the other day where I think it was like the average something or other, I don't know if it was the average American or the average whatever, spends like, could even have been in Ireland actually, spends like 5 hours a day in your phone. So you have a lot of time to do whatever, and a lot of people don't, they've even more time to just like give out on Twitter about jockeys or whatever. It's just the world we live in.
One other thing, right? The Wayroom, obviously, you're all riding in the same races again and again and again and again, and so there needs to be some collegiality and some understanding, but you're all competitive as well. That's the other thing, is like you're genuinely trying to beat these people on a daily basis. How do you use the inspiration of colleagues to drive you on and make you better? And are there specific things you look from some of the more experienced jockeys that you're like, okay, I'm just going to keep an eye on how this person is doing this or approaching some particular part of what it means to be a full-time professional jockey?
I suppose you definitely would learn a lot from the more experienced and older lads in the weigh room. And a lot of them can be very helpful to you as well. If you need to ask them questions or ask them about horses or any situations, in fairness, it can be helpful. And, it's definitely something that I try to make use of, to be able to learn from them.
So they're probably asking you for advice this stage, are they?
No, I wouldn't think so too much now.
How do you get, how are you, we're in this game so long, like you're riding Honor Jameen in a race in Cork, you're riding Concertista in a race in Limerick, God knows what you'll be riding in Cheltenham. They probably want some of the dust, the sparkle dust that you have, I guess. I don't know. So I think I'm just very lucky now to get them opportunities, You do seem very grounded, in fairness. Like, I think that's important. It's not like the many jockeys and many minor footballers and hurlers have gotten ahead of themselves.
I suppose that's it. So I don't think I think that I'd never do that. And I suppose I had to. I suppose I started with just having my own horse from my dad, and I suppose I was probably, I had 2 years. That was all I had. I couldn't get any other rides off anyone else and things. And I suppose I've slowly just been able to build it up. And in fairness, since I have got going, I haven't been too quiet for a spell, but. I had a few injuries starting off when I turned conditional too, and so it makes you appreciate, the good days a bit more then.
We've had we obviously have Shane Keegan on the show here regularly. I remember him writing a piece in the Times Ireland edition about parents of football, young footballers, and you could observe the very good footballer on the pitch playing under 18 or whatever. You could observe his father because you couldn't observe him at all. He was anonymous in the crowd and he didn't get involved. How important is an upbringing in terms of keeping you grounded as well? And you might have a treble or you might have 6 winners in a week or whatever, but you're just for your dad to say, listen, this is this is the way I brought you up, and there will be pitfalls as well.
Definitely. So that definitely brought up like that it wasn't ever going to be easy or anything, and I suppose it's just so I think I had a good upbringing with so I grew up on a farm with horses and everything as well, and I think it's a great way of life to grow up with.
Wexford people are just sound as well, in fairness. Like, you'd have to say.
He's buttering you up here, Sean.
No, but they are. Like, he works the likes of Paul Nolan. Like, you spend a day in Paul Nolan's, you're in better form. Wexford people, like, they have a nice kind of a nice way of like not taking themselves on too seriously. Love hurling, love racing, and I am probably buttering you up a bit here, to be fair.
Yeah, I think so. I know. I suppose they're definitely most people are anyway.
Sure, the Dubs love going to Wexford, don't they? It's
they've colonised it, yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Can I ask you about Energumene and Galopin Des Champs in particular? What are your hopes in terms of how well they're, from what you're seeing when you are down riding them out or riding out with them? How well do you expect them both to go at Cheltenham?
I'll definitely be hopeful that they'll both run very big races. I think Galopin Des Champs has been the quite big impressive horse this season so far. So it's probably a horse that's improved a lot from this time last year. He's had improved a lot, and I think his jumping to over fences is a big asset, and I'd be hopeful that he can do the job in Cheltenham.
Who's better, on Energumene or Shack and Poursois?
Well, I go on Energumene, and I know I've had a winner on him, so definitely be saying him. He was got a great spin off him in Cork, and I think he is the top horse. So I'll be hopeful that he'll turn the form around with Shishkin someday. Anyway,
is there any like chance that like when Mr. Burns joined the bowling team and Mo kind of just struck him in the knees to try and injure him, any chance you'll give Paul Townend a kick so you might get on Galopin Des Champs over fences at Cheltenham? Probably not.
No, I don't think so. No. I suppose if that happens, there's other people there that can get the rise too. So I definitely.
That's why the jockeys don't play five-a-side against each other, for fear that somebody might.
Well, some of them do. I think. Is there? Do Joseph and Donica's lads have a game against each other badly, I presume?
I'm not too sure now, but it's definitely not something that you'd want to be to happen to anyone else and things, because I think in racing, I think a lot of things can kind of, what goes around comes around, things can swing one way and swing back the other way.
But just seriously, what would be the difference? You haven't ridden him over fences, but what's the difference in riding a horse like Galopin Des Champs was 100-1 at Leopardstown last year, like over hurdles. It's amazing to think that, but he was 100-1, and that was grand. Then he ran the handicap at Cheltenham, so he wins a handicap hurdle. But like Paul Townend, the last day, I mean, he's nothing if not brave, the horse. But I mean, that must be some buzz.
Yeah, definitely. To ride a jumper like him over fences is probably one of the biggest thrills. In racing, when you have a horse that is carrying you and enjoying and taking on his fences and clearing them like he does is it's one of the big thrills of racing. When you ever sit on a horse like that, you'll always get a good thrill.
I have one last question for you. It's about where your improvement is going to come as a jockey. Does it just come from being in the situation again and again and again? It's 10,000 hours or whatever the equivalent is, or do you feel like you can embrace sports science and be more pliable and be better hydrated and do sports psychology and visualization? Is it a bit from column A and a bit from column B? What do you think yourself?
You definitely can take bits from both. Definitely can do. You have to do everything right for yourself to have yourself in top shape. Fitness wise and mentally for the race. And I think definitely the experience is a big help as well, and learning from previous races and mistakes that you've made and things.
I feel like your generation are more open to embracing sports psychology and the science of performance than some of the previous generations. Like a lot of the legendary jockeys that we've spoken about embraced parts of that as they got older and older, and even you think back to like Roy Keane doing yoga in his 30s but not in his 20s, but actually if he'd done it in his 20s he would have been better and lasted longer.
Definitely. I suppose it probably is something maybe when you get a bit older that you probably do look into more. I suppose when you're younger, you kind of just want to get out there and do it. You know, so it's probably something that you know, it's a big help if you can look into it and start doing that at a younger age.
You see the rugby boys last night, the 1982 Triple Crown winning team, was it? And like, what a different world. But at the same time, you kind of romanticise the likes of Paul Carberry, who I think Paul Carberry said, Sean, like, in my day you'd go for a few pints, now they go to the gym.
Yeah, that's it. It's you know, it's definitely I suppose a different game now. You know, everything seems to be gone much more professional. I think you could probably say that for all sports. You know, and that I think you know, all athletes and competitors have to be you know, more professional. You know, as the bar is rising the whole time. So you know, you have to work hard to go with it.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck, Sean. Thanks very much for joining us this week on Friday Night Racing. Cheers.
No problem. Thanks very much.
That's our guest this week, Sean O'Keeffe. A reminder, Friday Night Racing is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Share every racing moment. Visit hri.ie or follow Horse Racing Ireland on social media. Back after this.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
Right, Friday Night Racing brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. The Tote 10 to follow standings remain the same for Friday Night Racing. Johnny romping home at the moment in first place. Danny Mullins is second. I'm third. From Monday, you can join the competition as the Tote 10 to follow Cheltenham mini game opens for entries. Visit tote.ie to find out more about entering your 10 to follow stable for the Cheltenham Festival. This Saturday sees the Tote sponsor the Grade 3 Tote Bobby Joe Steeplechase at Ferryhouse. Racing this weekend, Ferryhouse and Navan, is that the... Nace.
Your local track.
You were looking after...
No, your local track is... Where is your local track? You're from Ataya, yeah? Your local...
Curra.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, so Nace is going to have a really good card. It's kind of that... I think they used to call it the Cheltenham Trials Day card, and I don't think you have Cheltenham Trials really 3 weeks before it, and I don't know if they call it that anymore, but it's actually a really nice card. Really good race on both tracks tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or sorry, at the weekend.
Anything specific?
Just looking at Ferryhouse, obviously honouring Bobby Joe from somebody who was like, I'm from Newbridge near Mount Bellew, and like the Bobby Joe story, like what he did for the parish, there's actually a statue of him in Mount Bellew, and the story goes, and the story is entirely true, that after one particularly frosty evening, one reveller, shall we say, exited one of the local taverns and decided that it'd be good to get up on Bobby Joe, but then it turned out he actually couldn't get off him because he was stuck to the horse, so that caused a lot of issues. But
was he naked? I mean,
what? Was he naked? He probably was in the end, actually. Certainly at some stage. But yes, Bobby Joe's statue is like a really, really iconic. I haven't. No. I haven't gotten up on a statuesque horse yet. But Burrow Saint taking on Any Second Now. Obviously, kind of grand national ambitions for Any Second Now and Burrow Saint, and it's that type of race which is appropriate given that it honours Bobby Joe. We've a very good juvenile hurdle to start off with as well, and Nace is a cracking card on Sunday, and then we have the Saudi Cup as well.
Okay,
yeah.
During the week there was a stable visit for Willie Mullins, or maybe the stable visit was last week, and it was in the papers this week that he was urging anybody with any information around doping and racing to come forward. This is on the back of the piece in the Sunday Independent last week. The second piece is going to be this week. Is it a two-parter or is it do we know? Is it more than two?
Actually, I spoke to somebody from the Indo today, and he was saying it might be three, but it'll obviously certainly two. Remember the Michelle Smith thing, which I thought was excellent. I think that was 3 parts. It's great to see that in the days of journalism's in a tricky place. Great to see the Sunday Independent given the resources to something like this and given the time, because it's not that easy anymore in journalism, and I think part 2 is on Sunday.
Okay, well, we'll wait until that comes out to have a more in-depth conversation around it, and when all the evidence is available.
Well, let's just say part 2 needs to be an awful lot better than part 1, because that just left so much to be desired in terms of journalism. I can't even go into it here.
Well, sorry, you can't say that without actually then...
There was just far too much stuff left out. Like,
okay, well, you need to explain.
But again, well, like, okay, well, it was discussed here, it was discussed in many places. There have been follow-up pieces in the Racing Post, which were very good, in the IrishRacing.com, in the Irish Times by Brian O'Connor, that were, I think, fair journalistic pieces. Like Steve Mahon, the way he was portrayed in the piece, I thought was just not accurate in terms of the stuff that was left out.
Okay, so there's extra detail that needs to be included before a full picture is given, is your view?
Yeah, I would agree with the fact that there's no such thing as impartial journalism. If Johnny Ward wants to write a piece, sorry, I shouldn't be using the third person, but if I want to write a piece about anything and it's 3,000 words, I already have an agenda, or already have something in my head that I think this is the way I kind of want to write it. And, you know, sometimes you will leave stuff out that maybe you should or you shouldn't, and impartial journalism may not exist, but there was stuff left out of this piece about Steve Mahon that is just unforgivable as far as I'm concerned.
Well, maybe it's going to appear in part 2. That's the...
Yeah, but not, like, some people won't read part 2. They read part 1.
At the same time,
but at the same time,
clearly, Mark, this is a 2-part thing. I guess the question will come down to whether or not the stuff about the whistleblower gives you so much pause for thought that you disregard what the whistleblower is saying, or if it's almost irrespective of the character of the whistleblower, you can say that there's a grain of truth in what he's alleging, and that's where ultimately this is going to come down to.
He's been proven to have, like, basically lied about stuff in the past. This is proven. Read Richie Forrest's piece in the Race Post, it's very good. No, that's not to say what Steve Mahon is. And again, like, according to Vincent Finnegan, he could not name the horse. He could not name the horse that apparently went on and won the race. You need to read the pieces here. So there's a lot of conflicting stuff going on here. But in fairness, I absolutely laud Paul Kimmage for putting in so much effort into trying to find drugs in racing, because I don't think that's a bad thing at all. And I think it's great that we have journalists who are putting so much effort in, and he will point out that the racing media is kind of goes along and doesn't do enough. And if I'm part of that media, I wouldn't necessarily disagree. I think, like, in the day-to-day kind of mundanity of it all, we maybe lose sight of looking into stuff like this. And I think some of the stuff he brought up about Lynn Hillier and her poor communication skills, again, is probably very valid. But the stuff I said at the start, I certainly won't go back from that. I thought there was far too much stuff left out for that to be a good piece.
All right, Friday Night Racing on Off the Ball is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. Make sure you get the Sunday Independent, make your own mind up on Sunday. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.